Diamond with How to Get Out of Babylon. I'm going to hold this up. There's Daniel Bailey, soccer ball. Kids talking about him, making fun of him in the background. Spirit Flyer Series, Book 2, The Only Game in Town. To get along, you have to go along. You have to go along to get along. You got to play the game. And this book in particular was really quite apropos in my life at the time, because at this time I was working as a casual, part-time worker on a dock in a union company handling freight and loading and unloading semi-trucks. Okay, semi-truck to tractor-trailer rigs, vans, pups. Pups are the short ones, 38-footers, 53-footers are the long ones. Anyway, and it was a question of, will I ever going to get hired? I was part-time, but if you worked enough hours and this and that, they had to hire you. And, of course, if you wanted to get hired, you'd let them know. I never told them I wanted to get hired. But I heard a million times, are you on the board? No, when are you going to be on the board? When are you going to be on the board? So when we start talking about the board in this book, it was at that time that I was reading this book. And so it was really it was very encouraging to me that I was doing the right thing. I was avoiding getting hired. I did not want to be hired, because then I'd be subject to scrutiny by the government. My wife and I, our intention was, through our whole marriage, was to slip through the cracks of the system, and we did that successfully for 38 years until she went to the government to end it. So whatever, that happened. Such is life. So sorry. Too bad, so sad for her. Very sad for her. Instead of being a practicing midwife right now, has a lifelong felony record because she pled guilty to a felony, which she didn't have to do. So anyway, very sad. I wish she was still practicing. I wish she'd never taken herself off under my coverture. She'd still be practicing. Never would have had to stop practicing. Okay, anyway. So we're on chapter 2. I got to find chapter 2. Hang on. My voice sounds funny because my ears must be stuffed up a little bit, plugged up. Chapter 2, Around Town. Daniel looked around the crowds of people for the boy and girl he had just met, but they couldn't be found. Okay, now if you remember, he was told, his mother and this Miss Happy, the owner of the toy store, the Goliath Toys toy store, like their little outlet, and she has a black crow, and she's a weird old lady. But he had just gotten his picture. He was given a black card, supposed to put it in a slot and put his face up to the hole, which was the center of the X with the circle around it. The X with the circle on it. So he got his picture taken, and now his face in a 3D thing is in this black card, floating in the depths of the black card, and it's grinning at him. So his own face, his own being, his own alter ego, image, spirit, demon is grinning at him, and he knew he'd done something very wrong. The last words were he just made something deep inside the boy had told him he had just made a big mistake. Okay, so now Daniel looked around the crowds of people for the boy and girl he had just met, but they couldn't be found. Something about the girl's face lingered in his mind. He also wondered about her warning him not to take the black number card. Don't take the number card. He stared at the strange little card. It was about the same size as a credit card and appeared to be made of black plastic. The shadowy image of Daniel's own face was the oddest thing about the card. As Daniel stared at it, he thought he saw the face actually change expression. He bent the card sideways for a closer look. Just then his mother grabbed his arm. Go ahead and pick up your free toys, Daniel, his mother said, pulling him along to a black truck that had the back doors open. The truck was stuffed with toys. A man looked at Daniel's number card, then waited. I'll take one of those and one of those, Daniel said. One Goliath faster blaster and Goliath combo gizmo coming right up, the man said. He put the toys in a bag and gave them to Daniel. That's the only combo gizmo we've given out. You've got the last one. That's the only one we gave out. You got the last one. The first and last one, I guess. I saw some boys practicing soccer over by the bleachers, Mrs. Bailey said. Why don't you go and see if they'll let you play? Oh, Mother, Daniel groaned. I don't know them. You need to mingle. Denise has already been invited to a party, Mrs. Bailey replied. She's about to say more, but then she saw Mr. Cutright. He was waving for her to come over. Daniel felt relieved as his mother drifted away. He looked around. Everyone seemed to be doing something but him. Denise was talking to 4 other girls. Daniel saw that he could make an escape. Without looking at anyone, he walked through the parking lot away from the field. As he limped along, he felt as if the whole world must be watching him. But he stared straight ahead. He was waiting to hear the voice of his mother calling him back, but the voice never came. He walked faster and faster until he was running in his limping gait. He didn't stop until the school bus was 4 blocks behind him and his escape was secure. Until the school was 4 blocks behind him and his escape was secure. Though Daniel didn't know the streets very well, Centerville was an easy town to get around in. All the numbered streets like 2nd and 10th ran east to west. All the named streets like Oak and Maple ran north and south. Main Street ran north and south through the middle of town, and at the very center of Centerville was a town square. The middle of the square held the county's courthouse as well as pretty trees and bushes and lots of grass. All along the sidewalk were old wooden rail benches. Most of the stores in Centerville lined the square or were on North or South Main Street. Main Street divided the town in halves of east and west. Since Daniel lived on Oak near West 14th Street, he knew he could find his way home. But first he wanted to explore. The south corner of the school ground was on East 10th Street, which also ran out to the highway away from town. Daniel followed East 10th Street all the way into the center of town. The town square was a change for Daniel. Since he had lived in the city most of his life, he had usually gone to stores in big shopping centers or in big malls. He immediately liked the homey stores on the town square. He had visited a music store, then looked at a comic book store looked at comic books in a drugstore. When he saw a sign for the library, he made a beeline straight for it. The library was just off the southwest corner of the square on 10th Street. The wooden door to the library was old and worn. The brass doorknob was polished bright from so many hands turning it. When he stepped inside, he felt both at home and a little disappointed at the same time. He felt at home because the library had the familiar smell of books and paper and ink, and yet he was disappointed because the Centerville library was much smaller than the one in his old neighborhood in the city. Hey, Gadion, how you doing? You the first one on. Looks like Z isn't here yet. Or Ray. Come on. Okay, come on. The library seemed empty, so he didn't try to hide his limp. A woman was behind the counter. Even though he was sure she noticed his legs, she didn't ask him any questions like some people did. Adults, even total strangers, would often ask him how he hurt his leg, as if they had a right to know just because he was a child and they were older. Daniel resented those kinds of questions, yet it was hard to be polite and not answer when someone asked. He filled out a form and got a library card. Hey, Zapton, how you doing? Got 2 wrenches on. How'd you? Hey, watch! I got a strike for that. I found out what the strike was for. It was for a video from the election, and it was because it was supporting the fable, the lie that there were interference with the election. So I got a strike because of that. I probably got to go and check if I have any other on the election and delete them before I get another strike and I shut my channel down. Probably do that when I get off here. Anyway. He filled out a form and got a library card. Then he slowly walked up and down the rows of shelves, looking at all the books. He had read many of the books before, and he felt as if he was among friends. There were still plenty of books that looked interesting, so Daniel thought that maybe the library would be better than he first imagined. He finally checked out a book on World War II airplanes that he found in the adult nonfiction section and went back outside. He walked around the town square once more. He walked around the town square once more, looking into the windows of all the stores. Then he walked up North Main to 14th Street toward his house. Daniel sighed with relief when he saw that his mother's car wasn't in the driveway. He got out his key and let himself in the front door. He ran upstairs, put the airplane book on his bed, then headed downstairs to the garage. The Spirit Flyer bicycle just seemed to be waiting for him. Daniel moved the Goliath Super Wings out of the way. He had only ridden the new bike a few times, and that was just to satisfy his mother. His mother had really hoped he would soon forget about the Spirit Flyer once she brought home the Super Wings. That's why she had wanted to leave the Spirit Flyer in a storage at their old apartment complex and get it later. Daniel wondered if his mother really intended to get the bike at all. She had made it plain to Daniel several times how much she disapproved of the old bike. The boy opened the small side door of the garage and rolled the Spirit Flyer outside. After he shut the door, he got on the bike. As he pedaled out into the street, he immediately began to feel better. Daniel had been both sad and worried about the move. Though he missed his friends, he missed his father more. Since his father still lived in the city, Daniel wondered how often he would see him. His father used to visit about every other weekend, but since they were living so far away now, he knew it would be even harder for them to visit each other. Daniel pushed all the sad thoughts out of his mind as he rode the old red bicycle toward the edge of town. One of the best things about riding the bike was that no one noticed his limp. On two wheels, the injury became invisible, and Daniel felt free and normal. He pedaled north up Oak Street until the houses were gone. Above 19th Street, a two-lane road ran west out of town. The town said Cemetery Road. Daniel thought that was an unusual name, so he turned onto the road. As soon as he pedaled past the last house, he saw the big factory. The factory was about a quarter mile down the road on the left. Two small smokestacks stuck silently up into the air. Since his mother worked there, Daniel thought he'd take a better look. A big chain-link fence surrounded the factory grounds. A small sign was stuck on the corner of the fence. The sign gave a warning. Goliath Industries, no trespassing. Enter at the main gate. Barbed wire ran along the top of the tall fence. About every 100 feet, the same sign was posted. Daniel looked at the large, dark buildings inside. He knew the factory was going to manufacture something for the government. His mother said it was part of a super-secret defense project. He rode past the main driveway of the factory. A man in a uniform sat inside a little office by the gate. He stared at Daniel and then went back to his work. Daniel thought the factory was ugly. He kept pedaling beyond the factory to the south and west. Daniel could see machinery working on a park-like area. His mother had said that Goliath was building a country club and golf course next to the factory, but that it wouldn't be completed until late September. Daniel kept going west away from town. Not far past the factory, he came to an old cemetery on the other side of the road. An arch was over the gate. Words inside the arch said Centerville Cemetery. An iron fence surrounded the rows and rows of tombstones. Daniel was just about to park the bike for a better look at the cemetery when it happened. The old red bike began to slowly move down the cemetery road by itself, and Daniel looked surprised and then smiled. This had happened several times before. He got a good grip on the handlebars and held on. That's when the handles of the handlebars moved down by themselves, aiming the handlebars up. The rolling front tire of the asphalt rose into the air, followed by the big back tire. Picture time. Goliath Industries. Two big black smokestacks. Ugly thing. It looks like a concentration camp, personally. The bike glided silently up into the air as if it were following an invisible road into the sky. The bike continued to pick up speed as it climbed higher and higher into the air. Daniel held on as the Spirit Flyer turned south. The boy and bike sailed toward a tall row of trees. But long before he got to the forest, the bike was at least 20 feet higher than the highest tree top. Daniel smiled again. As the bike sailed up into the air, a fresh feeling of freedom filled the boy. There's nothing like riding the old Spirit Flyer. Although he didn't really understand how the mysterious old bicycle worked, he didn't care. Soaring above the trees and field was enough. The bicycle turned again as it rose up near the clouds. Daniel crossed over a muddy brown river that looked like a mirror ribbon far below. Then the bike suddenly shot forward in the sky. The ride was smooth and the wind felt crisp and cool and seemed to wash all the sadness off the boy. He felt relieved that the Spirit Flyer still worked. He had been worried about the move might have damaged the old bike. Daniel had wanted to wrap the Spirit Flyer in a blanket and put it on top of the family car, but his mother had been dead set against it. And when his mother had said he couldn't even take it in the moving truck, Daniel felt worse than any time since right after the car accident. But during the long argument before the move, the old bicycle seemed to be telling Daniel not to worry. The only thing Daniel knew for sure was that the Spirit Flyer was full of surprises. Each ride held its own adventure, and each time he felt as if he learned just a little bit more about the secrets of the old bike contained. From experience, he had learned to go with the flow of the Spirit Flyer. Though he didn't know where the bicycle was taking him, he had confidence that he was okay. In one sense, he was more and more lost as the bicycle carried him away from town. But in another sense, Daniel felt more at home on the seat of the old bicycle than anywhere else. Daniel smiled high above the world. He began humming a song to himself. The words of the song were about kings and wind and light, and some of his friends with spirit lyres had taught him the song. He was still singing when the bicycle began to glide back down toward the earth. The boy and the bike seemed to be out in the middle of nowhere. All they could see was forest and trees and more trees. As they passed over a dirt road, the bike zoomed closer to the ground, just below the branches of a huge oak tree. He skimmed along just 3 feet above the road, then softly touched down. That's when he saw a driveway and a gate ahead. The bike turned inside the driveway and rolled to a halt. Daniel surveyed the scene ahead. Ahead of him was a white house with blue shutters. The house seemed abandoned or poorly kept up, since the grass was very tall in the yard. Off to the left was another long white building like a garage or workshop. It had 2 big blue doors on the front. Then Daniel heard voices. In a flash, he got off the old red bike and pushed it behind a tree. He peeked out from behind the trunk and then laid the bicycle down in the tall grass. He was confused, wondering why the bicycle had brought him to this place. He took a deep breath, and just at a guess, this is probably John's parents' place, Joe's place. I don't remember if it was blue doors and whatnot, but it was an abandoned place. Gaddy Ant's in English. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Hang on. Without burning myself. Had to do it slowly, sorry. He was confused, wondering why the old bike had brought him to this place. He took a deep breath and walked from behind the tree toward the white building next to the house. His limp was hardly noticeable as he walked through the tall grass. The voices got louder as he approached the blue doors. He was about 20 feet away when everything got quiet. Just then, the doors burst open. A boy walked out, followed by a girl. Daniel recognized them immediately. They were the same 2 children who had been behind him in the line at the school right before he got his number card. When the children saw Daniel, they stopped. The boy with sandy hair looked at Daniel, then frowned. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "This is private property." "John, don't be so mean," the girl said. She pushed back her rich brown hair and smiled at Daniel. "I'm sorry, he doesn't mean it." "Yes, I do," the boy insisted. "What are you doing out here?" "I was just riding my bike," Daniel said. "Way out here?" the other boy asked. "You're 8 miles from town. Did you know that?" "Well, I wasn't quite sure the road miles," Daniel replied. He cleared his throat and felt more uncomfortable by the second. "But I can leave. I don't really mean to trespass or anything. It's just that, well, never mind." Daniel turned around again. He began walking for the gate. He heard the children talking. "I think you're being mean to him," the girl said. "Why is he snooping out here?" the boy said. "He was in line with all the others. He took the number card. I don't like it." "Look, he's kind of crippled or something." "Shh," the girl said. "You'll hurt his feelings." Daniel walked quickly into the tall grass, trying not to let his limp show. He felt as if his ears were burning, as red as his red hair. He got to the gate and looked back. They were still watching him. Daniel waited. He knew she'd get the old red bicycle, but something told him to be afraid. He was already embarrassed and felt a little angry at his bike for bringing him to a place where he got in trouble. Then Daniel thought of a plan, a sort of a lie, really. He walked through the gate as if he had left his bicycle out in the road. He walked out of sight. Then he scrunched down and crept back toward the house. He peeked from behind a tree. The boy and girl were still standing by the big blue doors, and they appeared to be arguing. Finally, the boy went back inside, and so did the girl. She shut the door behind her. Daniel immediately scrambled back around through the gate and around for the spirit flyer still hidden in the grass. The old red bike seemed to weigh a ton as he struggled to lift it. "Come on," Daniel whispered. Yeah. He yanked and yanked, and he felt as if he were lifting an elephant. The old bicycle seemed to be resisting on purpose. Sweat popped out on Daniel's forehead. Just then, he gave a tremendous yank. The bicycle finally rose up on both tires. Daniel was about to hop on for a quick getaway, but when he looked up, the 2 children were standing 10 feet away and staring at him. The boy looked surprised. The brown-haired girl was staring at his bicycle. Daniel knew his face was beet red. He felt like his old freckles must be blinking on and off like neon lights, advertising how embarrassed he felt. "I'm trying to leave," Daniel mumbled. "Really, I am." He pushed the old bike forward through the grass, but it would hardly move. It felt like he was pushing it through mud. He looked at the children. The girl looked right into his eyes, and then she smiled. Daniel shuddered under her stare. Please don't go, she said. My name is Susan Kramer, and this is my cousin, John Kramer. And anyone with a spirit flyer is welcome here. Okay. This is book 2, which is what? Okay, leave one of them stupid things. I'm going to get off now anyway. Let me see what's going on here. Which book is this? This is book 2. We just started book 2, yeah. All right. Book 2 is The Only Game in Town. Just go back and listen to it. You'll know that. Okay, there you go. That's what it looks like. And I think you said you got 1 or 2 of them, so I'm going to X out now. I'm going to go to that channel that just signed on with the porno stuff, so just leave it. For now, I'll get it. Good night, everybody.